רדיו.
Welcome to Making Waves, real stories, real leaders, and the forces shaping global shipping. I'm Maya Rubin, and today we're going back in time with Avner Shats, maritime history buff and marketing communication manager at ZIM, to explore how a small company with a bold mission grew into a global shipping leader publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange. Let's dive in. So, first and foremost, how did you become ZIM historian?
Oh, it's a long story. I am myself a sort of historical exemplar. I started working in ZIM many years ago, and in 1995, we marked the 50th anniversary of the company. As you know, now we are marking the 80th anniversary. And at that time, there was a renewed interest in the history of the company, what we like to call our legacy. And there were several projects that started at the time, and I was tasked with several projects that had to do with introducing the history of the company to, first of all, the employees of the company, as well as our customers, our other partners, and so on, and to do it in an accessible way. And we did, I think, and it forced me to delve into the archives, to interview many veterans, to learn everything there was to learn about the company's history, which is, by the way, fascinating in every way. And that's where it started. Since then, I have, while I am taking other important tasks in the CMO office, I am also I have another hat of the company historian.
Okay, we'll get back to it later because we would like to hear some juicy history story.
Sure.
So what's the background when ZIM was founded?
Okay, so the official date is 1945 in June. And we have a very interesting paperclip from the time from one of the newspapers, which announces the establishment of a shipping company called ZIM. Mm-hmm. It had another name at the time, but the original ZIM was still there. Mm-hmm. And the other bit of the headline is Hitler has surrendered. Mm. So it was the end of World War II, really huge geopolitical events going on. And it was very tightly connected because the people in what was to become the State of Israel at the time, the leaders and the visionaries, were already sitting and have very, very specific plans about what the state to be would be like. And some of them were very, very adamant that an important part of the state to be would be a shipping company, a national shipping company, with a very important task, which was to bring Holocaust refugees from Europe to Israel. And at the time, planes were not really an option. That was the one way to bring masses of immigrants and refugees. And so they started to think about the future, which is a shipping company that carries passengers.
Wow. How many refugees, a Holocaust survivor, did ZIM?
Well, what we're talking about, we can elaborate a little bit, but from the day they established the company, it took 2 years to actually find a ship. It was not a simple task. The reason was that during World War II, about 60 or 70% of all ships around the world sank due to the war. So it was an amazing, really unimaginable situation. It was very hard to get a ship. And after 2 years, they have succeeded in doing so. And the first ship, named Kedma, which is a very emotional name for many ZIM veterans. We have a model of this ship in our lobby. So Kedma was purchased in the UK. It's a ship with a long, long history. But once it was purchased and a crew was sent over to Antwerp to board the ship, it was clear that this was the first ship of the new fleet of ZIM. And once they have succeeded in doing so, this was the starting point. And shortly afterwards, the actual independence of Israel came. And other ships joined, all of them very old, very barely floating ships, but that's what was possible at the time. And the stories behind purchasing each and every ship is just absolutely incredible. And it went on to a point where they managed to establish a really regular line between Europe and the State of Israel, the newly established State of Israel. And within 2 or 3 years, about 100,000 refugees came on board ZIM ships, to build a new country. And while this was the most important aspect of the activities in the early days, let us not forget that at the same time and in parallel, they also started to build the other ships that were merchant ships, that were cargo ships, because the company had a vision which was a bit broader than not only carry passengers, but also cargo, economics, build the country. So it was all taking shape during a very, very hectic and even explosive times of the very early years of the State of Israel.
Interesting. And so how many, I'm just curious, how many people did the first ship brought to Israel? Do you know?
Each time, you mean?
No, in total.
In total, I said about 100,000.
100,000. Wow.
Yeah. Each and every one was a huge story of really human interest. They were all refugees, and the captains were also people in some cases who escaped Nazi Germany. So the stories are really, really incredible, and there are so many stories which you can read about in the various publications we had over the years.
You actually wrote a book, right? You wrote a book about ZIM and...
Well, yeah, we published an anniversary album a few years back, and so it is online, so it's easy to
What's
approach.
It called?
It's called The Journey of ZIM.
The Journey of ZIM. And this period is mentioned there?
Sure, of course, absolutely. Yeah. It's the start. It's the start of everything. It's where everything began.
Yeah. So basically, when exactly ZIM embraced the container shipping, you would say?
We're not there yet.
We're not there yet.
It takes a while. There are several milestones in between, because the next important milestone we can mention is the reparation ships.
The reparations, yes, the German reparations.
Yeah, so about in 1953, the State of Israel decided to accept war reparations from Germany. Mm-hmm. And in fact, once the decision was taken, it was not very clear how to go about it, what to do with the promise of this newfound, so to speak, wealth. People had different ideas, but ZIM's management, these were people who were very, very inspired, very ambitious. They built a company from scratch, and they saw an opportunity, and they came up with a plan, a very, very orderly plan, which they presented to the government of Israel and said, this is what we should do with the reparation money or the reparation promise. What we should do is build a modern fleet, a merchant fleet of ships that of various types, and we can talk a little bit about what kind of ships were part of this project. But starting 1953 and all through the 1950s, a horde of 36 new ships, modern ships, were built for ZIM in German shipyards. And these ships were, some of them were passenger ships. I have to mention here that the early ships were called passenger ships, but in fact they were immigrant ships. So the conditions and the sort of how they were built and how they were managed was nothing like a modern cruise ship or what have you. Once the new ships came in, it was all very different. Passenger ships became cruise liners, places where people would go on holiday, not just to get from one point to the next. And at the same time, they built all types of specialized cargo ships, like bulk carriers, tankers, and so on. So the company expanded and became very, very varied in its operations. It enabled the company to open new lines to nearly everywhere on the globe. And while in the headlines, the most important or the most famous part was the passenger ships,
it shifted to the cargo ships.
The cargo ships was always there. It caught less attention. It was not as highlighted as the glorious cargo ships with all the VIPs and famous singers and what have you on board. But it was there. It was growing, and the company managed to operate all types of ships and be a really, I think you have mentioned the word powerhouse in some point. The company was growing organically in a very impressive way. And we are still just at the 1960s.
So that's when the focus maybe was to the cargo shipping?
Yes. What I can say, first of all, let's speak a little bit about the passenger liners and what happened to them. They were part of the local culture, I would say. They were very well known. People loved them. People still have nostalgia about the old passenger ships. They were very beautiful, very impressive. People, sailed on the Theodor Herzl or the Moledet or what have you to various places to vacation. It was not common at the time to go abroad. So people were very, very into these ships.
Fascinated.
And really the peak was a ship named Shalom. Shalom was built in France. And it was like a miniature of one of the most luxurious passenger ships ever built, the France, like a huge, incredibly beautiful ship. The Shalom was more or less the same. It was the top of the line. It was a ship of dreams. It had things that people did not know exist on land, like television. There was no television here yet, but on board the Shalom, you had the closed-circuit TV and ship-to-shore telephones. Incredible stuff, 1964. So it was really, really amazing and
innovative.
Innovative in every way. And people loved it, but unfortunately, the timing was not great because it was just when cheaper flights were becoming more available. There were other issues that caused this whole endeavor of the passenger ships to lose money in the end. And so the company decided to make a very important decision, which was to stop operating passenger liner. It was a big decision, very important, very not popular, because you can imagine that people all over the place loved these ships. They were so beautiful and
Wow. Was there someone else that took it, or at the time, no?
yeah, for a short while there was another company that ZIM helped operate, but eventually all ships were sold, including the Shalom. And it was decided that the company will focus on cargo ships.
And when was that?
That was about 1968, so the end of the 60s.
All right, we're moving.
Yeah. So passenger ships still kept going for a while, but it became nostalgia. And this nostalgia is everywhere, because you can look at our websites and just online nostalgia websites where they still dedicate place to these beautiful cruise liners. And at the same time, cargo shipping became like the core business of the company. Mm-hmm. And now we're getting closer to container shipping. And that's the next milestone.
Okay.
So, you may know that container shipping is a relatively new invention. In fact, it was invented back in the 1950s. But the time it took to gather momentum and to become a prominent way of delivering cargo across the globe took many years. In about in the early 70s, ZIM was investigating ways to improve the operation of one of its lines, the line between Japan and America. Mm-hmm. It was called the Pacific Star Line, and they came to the conclusion. They are specific people who were expert, who studied the situation, and they came up with this idea: we can containerize this trade, which was a new thing at the time. The ports were not always ready. There was a lot to be done, and there were no dedicated container ships.
Okay.
ZIM took on itself a huge project in every way you can look at it, which was to build a container line with dedicated ships that were built especially for this line. The line was called ZCS, ZIM Container Ship. It has become really a household name everywhere in shipping specifically, because it was first and pioneering in so many ways. First of all, like I said, dedicated ships. Beforehand, you could put containers on ordinary old-type cargo ships, but they were not made for this. So they've built a series of ships, mm-hmm. starting in Italy and later in other shipyards. And they planned a new line. It was called, or not called, but it was rather nicknamed a pendulum line. Why pendulum? Because it goes back and forth. It goes from Haifa through the Mediterranean to America, down to the Panama Canal, all the way across the Pacific to Japan and Hong Kong, and then back. So, a pendulum. And this was a novel thing completely in the shipping industry. It was so innovative and so successful that other companies were copying this idea. Mm-hmm. And what I can say is that even though there were very many ups and downs along the years, this line, this mode of operation existed for more than 40 years. So you can make sense of how successful the idea was, how novel and how groundbreaking, really, which is a really interesting story. And the stories around this, again, just like the stories of every other chapter in ZIM's history, is incredibly interesting. They were people who, it was new to many people. It was a new way of operating. Everything was planned ahead, a very exact timing and schedule. I think Dudu Arbel before and spoke of the importance of schedule reliability. It was a novel thing. Before, when ships would come to port and stay there for 2 weeks and load and unload, and everything was sort of old-fashioned. It's like in the 19th century. It wasn't a modern industry.
Yes.
Container shipping changed all this, and ZIM was first.
What geopolitical crisis did ZIM overcome?
Well, just basically any political crisis that
So many. Which one to name?
well, you can start in 1956 and the Suez Crisis, because, as you know, this war was fought over the right to go through the Suez Canal by England, France, and Israel. But all along the way, first of all, the freedom of shipping was an important issue, and ZIM was always involved in this crisis, and they were operating always in line with the wider picture of how the world operates. So ZIM was always involved, was always a part, and always had to overcome in very many ways, creative and agile ways, in order to cope with the situation. I could mention, for example, that the ZCS, this exact and well-planned line, is going east to west. It is not going via the Suez Canal, because when the line was planned and the Suez Canal was blocked, it was not just like today.
Yeah.
It was not an option to go through the Suez. So, yeah, everything that ZIM did was always influenced by the general situation, and its people always had to find a way around it.
Yeah. How did privatization reshape the company?
Well, we're moving fast ahead.
Not so fast. we're good.
So the company, as you may know, was partly owned by the government and by other actors. And this really caused a very specific and very traditional organizational structure, organizational culture, and privatization was a major milestone to change all this. When it's a company is owned by the government, the actual decisions that are made are not always business-wise. I mean, there are wider considerations to be taken. But once it's a private company, it's a private company. It has to answer to the owners or the stakeholders and operate in a very, very efficient and precise way in order to gain profits. And I want to say that even before, and even when the company was in its cradle, they always said, okay, we have a mission. You can actually see it in the archives, in the protocols. Yes, we have a mission. We have important things to do. But let us not forget about the bottom line, the profits, we're a business company, and we need to take it into account. It was not always easy. It was not always possible. Once it became a private company, these considerations were completely out of the picture, and it became a very much more focused company on business and operation.
Of course.
I think that probably those traits that shaped the company along the years stayed with us, even after the privatization. So the way you just mobilize the same traits, the same abilities, the same spirit to the new status.
Yeah, status.
Okay, so
would you like to add or emphasize something, Avner?
Yeah, I think that, as you know, ZIM today has vision and values that are that lead the company. The Z factor has already been mentioned here. The special spirit of ZIM. I think this is not only related to the current ZIM, which is incredibly successful, innovative, and moving forward. Some of these traits were part of the history of ZIM as well. So creativity, thinking out of the box, being innovative, being agile, which is a very important value for ZIM today, has always been there in one way or another. So today, this renewed and strong focus on all these traits, like agility and the other values and the innovation and everything to do with this is all part of the new ZIM, which really was shaped in many ways by the new CEO, Eli Glickman, who took position in 2017 and really transformed the company in many ways. But again, like I said, some of these traits were already there. They just needed to be pampered, nurtured, and come into fruition.
I'd like to ask you something from your own experience and something personal. Especially as someone who loves the history and knows it and learned it, what story or what event or what news, I'm sure a lot, and I'm sure many things inspired you and talked to you and touched you. But what, if you had to choose one, what would it be? What would you like to share?
Well, that's not easy.
Like I said, I'm sure there are plenty, and on different levels. But I would like to hear.
For me personally, I would say that seafaring history is the more colorful and interesting, and really appeals to me. Also because I have a very brief history as a seafarer in my youth, so to speak, and. So stories about ships and about sea adventures in every shape and form are really what attracts me. Of course, the business story, the bigger picture of ZIM is incredible, but once you start interviewing people who were on vessels, and they tell you about their things like, for example, a captain's experience of total inability to control his ship and not understanding what's going on. And it was near Japan, and it was the big tsunami that ruined the Fukushima.
Oh, wow.
So people were there during incredibly catastrophic events on one hand, or incredibly human angle events like saving life at sea.
So how did you overcome it? Like, what did you do?
He realized that at some point what was going on and managed to take control of the vessel, that he was influenced by a tsunami wave, which does not act as normal waves do. So this is just a small example. There were very many examples of seafaring adventures. That is really what appeals to me. On the other hand, I've interviewed managers and people who took part in major milestones like building the ships of the reparations or building the container ships of ZIM. And each and every one of them has an incredible story to tell.
Yeah, another time.
Sure.
Another time, another story. So what will the story of ZIM look like in 80 years from now?
Wow.
Because we're almost, we're the 80 now.
That's a hard one. First of all, it won't be me, so I'm not really worried about it. But I can say that the recent, I would say, 5 or 6 years since the COVID crisis and the IPO, it was so intensive and so eventful that really the whole rich history of of ZIM almost dwarfs in comparison. And for me, one of the most incredible things was, okay, we have a great story, but we never were extremely successful and profitable. And we have become the most profitable company in Israel. We, in recent years, have absolutely amazing financial results. This is something that is really making history in new and unpredictable ways. So my hope is that in 80 or 40 years, we will still look back at this point in history, and realize that something really incredible has been achieved.
Well, Avner, thank you so much for taking us on a journey through ZIM's remarkable milestones. From the day it was founded over 80 years ago until today, and 80 years to come. You've been listening to Making Waves, real stories, real leaders, and the forces shaping global shipping. If you enjoyed this episode, follow, rate, and share the podcast. We'll be back soon with more stories from the world of shipping.